Oh no, this is fun. Look at that.
Wow, there's 5 people here.
Wow,
Welcome.
that's
Ooh,
amazing.
that's
Five
cool.
five people like watching us
Watching.
troubleshoot. That's the
Yeah.
best stream ever.
Yeah, you should rename the stream.
Yeah.
Troubleshooting.
What troubleshooting 101. Okay, here we go. Now
Ta-da!
I'm using my document camera as my video feed. That's what's happening. That's why it's so messed up. Wonderful.
I thought that was an intentional effect. Just
No, 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 it's not.
kidding.
And that's
That's
why it's
cool.
like it's so delayed because this is my IPVO. It's like a 10-year-old document camera, you know. But since Meet doesn't want to relinquish control of my nice webcam, I'm stuck using a 10-year-old document camera as the video feed. So, congratulations, Scott. You did it. Wow. And now it works. I can edit out that entire beginning part up till now before I post to YouTube. Uh, uh, this is why, like, you're right. It's like audio is like always one of the hardest things with anything. Ugh, my
Oh,
God. Video stuff
it's
too, obviously,
it's the
but
bane of streaming to me. Like when you're like trying to play a game and also be entertaining, and then someone's like, "I can barely hear you," and you're like, "Seriously,
that's the
seriously?"
well. The thing is, once you think you have it figured out, right? You think like, oh, I got this figured out. It's all set. God dang it! Something happened. Why isn't it
Yeah,
working?
yeah.
And part of it's the fun. I like troubleshooting. Like as frustrating as this was, I enjoy that process of problem solving and trying to figure it out. Because right then, when I kind of figured it out, I was like, I learned something and I figured it out, and the stream is happening, and I didn't have to bail on everything and rage quit, which I was close to at one point there. Um,
I understand.
so I'm kind of I'm happy in a way that I managed to get this to work. So I'm still playing with a few things here, trying to figure stuff out. But whew, wow. Anyways, welcome. Uh, uh, EpicLalaGirl. Well, okay, let's get to the series of questions. I had like a notebook and I started writing down questions for you.
Oh wow.
Um, one was,
Do you
where does EpicLalaGirl come from? I mean, what is that name, that handle? What is that reference to, or is it just
so
something fun?
when a man loves a woman very much, that's what Epic Lala came from. No,
Ooh.
but seriously, my this is actually why I was so excited to meet you, because I read your bio on Twitter because my name Lala comes from, I was in kung fu classes for 10 years, and my best friend I
Ah,
met there, and she used to say, "You look just like so girly when you do everything." She's a Marine. "You look so girly when you do everything. I'm just gonna call you Lala because it doesn't look like you could actually hurt anyone because you're just like la la la." And I was like, we have a very loving but aggressive relationship with one another. So we say things like that. And I was like, I like the name Lala, but I'm gonna make it Epic Lala so people can call me Epic Lala. So that is literally where
you
that
know
name
what?
came
That's
from.
kind of fitting if you know, like Tao Lu Kung Fu, which is what I usually practice, as well as Sanda.
Oh
If you're
wow.
familiar with those.
No.
So Talu is the performance, like straight sword forms. It's very epic Lala because it can be extremely feminine sometimes the way they do it, but at the same time, it'll kick your ass.
Yeah.
The woman will beat the crap out of you, but look good doing it, right?
Yes. And like, so when I started in kung fu, it was when, like, well, I mean, she's been famous my whole life. I feel like Michelle Yeoh was like, but she
Mm-hmm.
was like
Yep.
really, really, really famous, and I was just so like, yeah, I can do, like, I want to do. I took Hung Gar Kung Fu, which is a Southern
Okay.
style,
Yep.
so it's got like really low stances. But I really wanted to learn like Wing Chun, like the whole dancing kind of. I did learn, which I don't even have it anymore, but I did learn a fan form.
Okay. I knew a fan form at one point.
But that was fun. And then we had lots of spears and swords. In fact, that was one of the things I was going to show you when I was talking to you, but they're over there. Maybe I'll take a break later and stand up. I have lots of swords just sitting around so I can threaten people in my family with them. They're not sharp. They're practice
Oh yeah,
swords.
I have a bunch of swords as well. In fact, it was funny. One probably like 10 years ago, when I was training for competition, I probably had like 3 or 4. I have a couple weapon stories. I had like 3 or 4 swords in my car. You know, and I was a teacher, and I like, you know, I'd come in, I'd park my car, of course, like I always do, and there's just swords sitting in my trunk, right? And so I guess like one of the security people like went to the front office, and they're like, "Do you realize there's a car with a whole bunch of swords in it?" They were just like, "Yeah, that's Scott. Don't worry about it."
That's awesome. So everyone knew that that was like your thing.
Yeah,
That's
they knew
cool.
it was me. Another funny story about weapons is I went up to Kitchener, Ontario once with a whole bunch of friends of mine. This is back in probably 2003, maybe, to visit Grandmaster Iron Fist Pan. We're going to do
Yes, yes, I met him.
You
With
did?
yes, with the like
Yeah.
palace knuckles.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so we did it. We're going to do a weekend training with him. So we were going up to Kitchener. Of course, we had to exactly Memorial Day. It is a Memorial Day with swords in my trunk, and we were going up to train with him. Of course, me and my buddies, we had all of our weapons in this sedan. There's 4 of us in like a car full of, you know, like kung fu weaponry, swords and staffs, just like lining the seats. And we get to the border, and of course they walk up and they're like, "Do you have any weapons?" And we're like, "No." And we're like, what are we supposed to say? I'm like, "We have to, you know, go across the border." And then it's, you know, they're like, "Go ahead." We're like, "Yay, Canada!"
Oh my gosh, you're so lucky. Oh my goodness.
That was
Wow.
hilarious. That was a great weekend too. Oh my god. So,
That's awesome. That's funny. You know, I had forgotten because that was like a former life for me almost. And like now I say I found my people with Twitch, but when I was in martial arts, I felt like I found my people then too. It's like I always gravitate towards the people in
yep.
fringe but cool fringe stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like normal people are really boring. Like people who just sit around and talk about cars and houses and money. Just...
In The Bachelor, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. That's. I mean, I have some family members who are like that, and I love them dearly, but I can't
Right.
have long conversations with them. So this is fun.
Well, it's one of those weird things where if I was never that good at parties, because if I went to a party with lots of people, especially if I didn't know any, I would either find the other teachers, because teachers can always talk to each other. That, you know, that's just the way it is. Or I would find the kids, because I knew I could have a conversation about gaming with the kids that I wouldn't be able to have with the adults, you know, or a martial artist.
Right.
You know, because I knew, you know, that I could have a conversation and have some similar interests. So, you know, otherwise it's like I was never that. I can talk sports, but only because I've taught myself to. You know, when I had my first job at a lab, I had never watched a professional game of football probably in my life.
Oh wow.
You know? And so like they're all talking, "Oh, the game, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, I'm going to go outside and practice Kung Fu, which is what I did. I was like, I'm not going to have lunch with these yahoos. I can't even engage in a conversation. You know, so it was, but I was like, professionally, I guess, you know, I was like, I have to watch and know some baseball and some football, you know, and some hockey probably, you know, and that's what it came down to eventually. I picked up enough that I can, even now I can at least be like, yeah, look at those whatevers, you know, those footballers really footballed well last night, didn't they? And, you know, because I was an army brat, I grew up in Europe.
Oh,
and so, of course, I came over here. I'm like, I don't know what American football is.
And Americans are like, how dare you call it American football? It's just football. And you're like, no, literally, like the world is bigger than the United States, believe it or not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How dare you?
How dare you?
Okay, this is
So,
fun.
so I still do kung fu. I still practice.
Do you
Yep.
really?
Oh
I
yeah. It's
don't.
just something I it's one of the things I know if I habits build good habits, and I know if I ever stop that habit, then it'll stop, and that's like my one of my outlets and one of my ways to stay in shape. Some people have gym memberships or cyclotrons or whatever. Cyclematics. What do they have now? What is that thing where you watch the video and they're like, "Come on, you can cycle more. Go,
Oh
go,
my
go."
gosh, Peloton.
Yeah, the Peloton
Yes.
thing. Yeah, and it's like, no, I don't need that. I want to go actually like get in fights with people and beat them up, or get
Wait,
beat up,
what?
or the other.
You
So
you actually so wait, you actually spar with people still?
yeah,
Oh my
oh
gosh.
yeah, yeah.
I can't imagine.
I'm a wrestling coach too, so it's just another form
That's
of wrestling.
fun.
So
That's so cool. See, I'm interviewing you instead. This is interesting.
sorry, background
No,
for anyone that didn't know me, but
I'm super excited
but
about that.
I'm trying to throw stuff out to see how much more we have in common because it's like, long lost sister or something.
Yay! Yes. So, I did kung fu for 10 years, and then I had babies, and then I didn't do kung fu for a while. And I still remember part of my forms, some of my forms, and I do them like in the middle of like, it's like really kind of nerdy and disgraceful probably because I'll be like doing something like my own version of aerobics in the living room, and then I'll just be like do some like tai chi type move or whatever, and then be like, and I did find out I can still do very poorly like a spinning kick, and I was like, I can still do this. That's the thing that I agree with you about, like if you keep it from when you're younger. I can also
Hmm.
do a back bend from standing, and my daughters
Wow,
are like, I can't do a back flip, just a back bend, but
that's
still,
still
yeah. I was trying to help my daughter because she wanted to try out for cheerleading last year, and I was like, well, so it's kind of like this, and then I was like, well, and then I was like, well, I think I can kind of show you. And then I did it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I can still do that. I'm not decrepit yet. Dark Mark, you used to do karate. Yeah, local places do cost a lot.
Yep,
You
they
should
do.
do a stream, Scott. You
I should do a kung
just.
fu stream.
I
I'll
actually have.
I'll teach Hungar.
Yes, the low stances. But
Yep.
Tai Chi's good. Tai Chi's good.
Yep.
I actually have a student who wants to create a VR for training people
Hmm.
to do Tai Chi, which I think would be kind of cool. But
Yep.
I feel like we're not quite there yet because right now we use hand tracking, but
Hmm.
most people don't have extra trackers. Like with the last Oculus, not like the Rift, not the
Hmm.
Quest. You could
Right.
get extra trackers, and with the Vive, you could get extra trackers and put them like on your arms and legs,
Right.
so you could have more degrees of freedom. But like regular people who can afford the $300 Quest can't afford that.
Right.
So one day,
Yeah.
one day we'll be able to do that in VR.
Yeah. And we can segue into VR if you want at this point. But
Okay.
now, when is it going to happen? Because we've had some iterations as far as like you were talking about being able to do martial arts and things virtually in your room. Like the Wii was the first thing, right? And then there was the Xbox Connect, right? That was
Yes.
huge, right?
Yes.
Because I
Yes.
play like so much, Dance Revolution and stuff with my own kids, right? It was crazy. It was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it could mimic me on the screen, and I was like, I'm
Yes.
like, you can do kung fu like this. Someone should make a game. Um, but I'm thinking of like they have the sensors now on the Quest in the Quest 2. When those will eventually just emit, infrared beams that'll bounce off the walls and then hit you and then sense exactly the dimensions of not only you but your room. I mean, that's got to be coming pretty soon.
Oh my gosh, that would be incredible. I hadn't even thought of that. That's
I'm going to patent it right now. No.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a great idea. Because like I still have in here like because this is half of our bedroom that is
Mhm.
my desk office space, which is divided by this thing so that it looks like I have an office, but really there's a bedroom behind it. And over there are the Vive trackers that used to go up on the wall so you could track like your movement when
Hmm.
you're using the Vive. And then the Quest, or not the Quest, the Oculus Rift. Oh, I thought I had those controllers in here. I must have taken them out. The Oculus Rift had better trackers only because you could set them on your desk and you didn't have to hang them up
Hmm.
on your walls. And then now that we have the Quest and the Quest 2, you don't even need trackers.
Yep.
Of course, you have
It's got the
you have
hand
some
things.
little
Yeah.
problems. Yes, they can even track your hands. I didn't
Yep.
even know they were going to do that. And then just out of nowhere, I saw my hands when I was picking up a controller. I apparently have not been reading as much as I should be because I was like, oh, this
Or
is new.
playing as much as you should.
Yeah.
So,
There's
I
that
mean,
whole trying to get tenure thing.
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a big deal getting tenure. Trust me. Because then you have that freedom to do more of what you want and not have to worry about repercussions. It's like when I got tenure, no more ties. That was my freedom right there.
Nice. I see. The only thing I worry about is the things I say. That's why I said I try to kind of keep my Dr. Hayes and EpicLalaGirl separate. It's not like there's not like a secret identity or anything like that. Like when I meet people at TwitchCon and stuff, I tell them my real name.
Yep.
But I just don't want like, because sometimes I'll write things like on my Twitter profile or say things in my streams like "fuck grading," things like that. Oh my gosh, is this a child friendly?
Some of my 8th graders will be here, but it's nothing they haven't heard before.
Oh no.
I don't know if they're here or not. I don't know. I'm not looking. So
I was like, we can edit that part out. Well, something like bleep grading. I don't want to do it. Things like that. So yeah. But that's really well. And I think the other thing for me, I don't know, like sometimes I feel like I want to be one of the people who changes the system. And then another part of me thinks that by the time I get tenure, I'm just going to want to just
then
go
you're
with
part
the
of this.
flow.
Once you get tenure, you're part of the system.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you.
Like,
You've already
by then.
you've already gone to that realm if if you got tenure. But that's a big deal getting tenure. Is that this year that you're going to get it, maybe, or
no, 2 years.
2 years? Okay, yeah,
years.
two more years. Okay.
So next year I have my pre-tenure review, and then really it's kind of 3 more years. But you can apply early, and I think I'll be ready to apply early because we only have to have like 10 published works that people are citing and referencing. And be applying for grant funding. So it's interesting because different schools have different standards. If anyone listens to this and is wondering, like, well, what do you have to do to get tenure? It's different at different schools. Like I was at a satellite campus, like a small campus of Purdue, before I moved to where I'm at now. And because it was mostly a teaching campus, it doesn't do a lot of research. They didn't expect me to do very much writing at all. They just wanted me to like be a good teacher that students liked and do a little bit of writing, and that was enough. But now, like the bigger schools expect more, and they expect you to do research and change the world. And I like that idea.
And they like that idea too because
yeah, they do.
They like to have people that they can be proud of.
Yeah,
you can't blame them, right?
Yeah, and they want people whose students are gonna be like, ooh, I want to take her class instead of like, I'm here taking classes and I hope to get a degree in something so that my life won't suck. Which is what I think some students think. They're just like, I'm going to go to college just so my life won't suck. Which I think is a terrible reason, by the way, to go to college.
Because your life can suck regardless of what. Yeah. You can have a college education, life sucks. You could not have a college education, life sucks.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Or you can have a wonderful life with or without,
I mean, and that actually is another segue into like things I like to research. So I'm working on a game to try to get kids interested in STEM. I'm trying to think. I've been telling everyone this game, so if I say this and someone hears it and steals my game, I'm just gonna make it better than them anyway, so it doesn't matter. So my idea though for this game, and I've been storyboarding with some of my students this semester, is actually called Stemming from Disaster, putting people in a natural disaster in a VR headset. So we're looking at Houston after the floods, and then they like get to the location, and the narrative behind the game is that they have this very wealthy parent who's like, you are my prodigal child, like son or daughter. You've been wasting money and haven't been doing anything. I've sent you here to Houston to make a difference and stand up for our family name and make us look good. You have $100,000 and you need to figure out what you want to do to help Houston. You use your best judgment. And if you do a good job, then I'm not going to cut you off. And if you don't, you're cut off. And then this guide comes up, and she's like going to show you around. She's like an assistant from the mayor's office, and she's going to show you around the city and show you different things that are wrong because of the flooding. And then you get to make choices on like asking whether or not you want to ask questions like, oh, this bridge, or there's this flooding, or this whole community was like all of their houses are flooded, or oh, well, we can't go there because we need a boat to get there, these kinds of things. And every time you spend money or ask a question, it adds to your score. And then at the end, hopefully your mom doesn't disown you, and also and hopefully your mom doesn't disown you, and also you get a score that tells you like what kind of engineering you might be interested in. So it's like, oh, you're like interested in things that have to do with city planning, or oh, you're really interested in the fact that the internet didn't work and trying to get that back up and running. So maybe you would be like an information scientist or a networking person, things like that.
I muted myself for a second. I really like the idea of the career exploring, because a lot of the career exploration stuff they have for education right now is very dry, and it's obvious, what the results are going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, I know I'm Gryffindor. It's like you can predict what it is that you're going to end up being. Whereas if it's more subtle and I think more diverse in just the sciences, or STEM fields, then it might do more diligence to those kids to see what they're actually not only interested, but might be good at,
Yeah.
and also explore careers. Like, I had no clue all the different science careers when I was a kid at all. I mean, even now I'm like amazed at what people do and they get paid to do, and you're like, I guess someone would have to get paid to do that, don't they? It's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, Natty Science. Welcome in.
Hello, Natty Science. I'm Lala. Nice to meet you.
Natty Science is a biochemist.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So are we allowed to ask people if we should get vaccinated? Full disclosure, I already did.
I already did too.
but I after I had some minor side effects, and I was like, I probably should have talked to some of my friends in biology before I got the vaccination. But I was just like, I feel like this is the smart thing to do, and I trust scientists because I'm a scientist. So.
Yep. Natty Science loves VR. I love VR too.
Nice. I love VR too. Well, what's funny about that? I say I love VR. I'm actually I'm a VR researcher, but I'm also a VR cynic, right? Like, I don't want anyone else to put some stupid thing that should not be in virtual reality in virtual reality. And having said that, I will confess that I used to think that Tetris and VR would be the stupidest thing ever. I'm like, well, it's 2D, you don't need. And then it's like, oh, wait, this can be fascinating in 3 dimensions. I was wrong. I stand corrected, and I am okay with acknowledging when I'm wrong.
Yep.
But there's some stuff that's just like you
Yep.
probably don't need it to teach the alphabet. And I also don't like wearing a VR headset for more than, honestly, I don't, for most things, I don't like wearing a VR headset for more than like 5 minutes. And every now and then, for some experiences, I like there's this supernatural VR fitness thing I've been doing lately. And that I'll be in for like 30 minutes to an hour sometimes.
There you go. Yeah, watching a whole movie in VR, because I know people that do that, because you can get, looks like you're in a theater, right? You're doing the
Yeah.
YouTube app and it's like massive and it's kind of cool, but I'm like, that kind of defeats the purpose of VR.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
like it's just so much nicer to be able to sit down and like eat the popcorn without worrying about, smashing it in my face.
Yeah. Well, and also, I don't know if this is, I feel like this is a typical thing. I almost never go to the movies by myself. So,
True.
like, it's to me a shared experience. And that's one of the things that I think we're really missing, at least right now. Who knows what new devices will come out, like you were talking about, like the tracking on the Quest. Maybe it'll be able to track my friend sitting next to me with a headset on too soon. But right now, if I put on a VR headset and I go to the Super Bowl in VR or I go to a movie in VR, I can't share the experience in the same way.
Hmm.
Like I can't look at you and be like, "Oh my gosh, do you see that?" Like I just like kind of imagine that you're looking shocked at the same time that I am. It's
Yeah. I mean, there are, from what I've seen, I'm not a particularly social person on VR, but some people are, right? Some people go in there and they go in, these chat rooms and everything where people are there and they play mini golf with other people and stuff like that, or Beat Saber. So there already is that social aspect, but it's kind of, I don't know. I'm not really into that yet. Maybe I should be, but
um
I don't know.
I don't know. I do a lot of research in social VR experiences and like mixed reality kind of experiences of social experiences, like training teachers how to be better teachers in front of
Hmm.
virtual students, things like that. But there's still a disconnect from the things that we know are part of normal human interaction, right? Like,
Hmm.
so before I got my PhD in simulation, I got a master's degree in simulation. But before that, I got a master's degree in communication. And one of the things that I learned and taught frequently was that something between 65 and 93% of communication is nonverbal.
Hmm.
So we don't have the ability to transmit all of the things that we implicitly communicate. Like I can't intentionally be like, oh, and right now I should tell my avatar to shrug its shoulders. So unless you have tracking on me, then you're gonna lose the nuances of my physical behavior. And I'm super cute, so you want to see that.
Yep.
I'm joking.
Hey, Eric,
But
welcome in, and Uncle Bill, welcome in. Um, I'll add something else. So my oldest daughter streams occasionally, right?
oh cool.
And she got into this thing where she wanted to be a VTuber. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
So you make the virtual avatar, and it tracks your face, and it'll mimic your movements virtually. So you can make up your little character, and it won't be you. It'll be, some, anime version of you. And I gave her my old Stream Deck, and she's plugged in emotions, into the
Oh,
different things, so she
nice.
can express emotions using her VTuber. And so like she started, I'm like, this is fascinating. Because she didn't want, she's 16, she didn't want to show her face online, but she wanted
Right.
to, stream Overwatch. And I'm like, well, that's a great workaround. I'm like, but that made me think of that, where as far as that communication piece, you know, how far we've come in that, like, modeling face, because a lot of the facial expressions it tries to pick up, frowny or whatever, but it's not perfect for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's it's actually a big part of my research is So the idea of social presence, I mean, I don't want to, I feel like I'm being super nerdy, but I guess that's the point of the stream. So if I get too deep into the area,
You
well, let
can
me,
nerd out, but keep it at
okay.
that 8th grade level.
Okay, so I will say this because I think it's relevant to understand why I'm about to get too nerdy for just a second. Um, when you get a PhD, they tell you when you're focusing on a dissertation that you should focus on one piece of one aspect of the area of science that you're interested in, and then you should become the world's expert on that one piece in a way that
Mhm.
nobody else is, which means you have to get so specific about one thing that probably nobody else cares that deeply about. And then, as one of my mentors said, and go Tasmanian devil on it. So it's like, so then he's like, I think about things about social presence, like how people connect digitally in all kinds of ways and feel connected to one another. I think about it a lot. And it's
Mhm.
probably one of the banes of my personal relationship, like my relationship with my partner, because I'm frequently like, are you paying attention to me? But it's not like a norm. Like I know everyone's gonna be like, well, that's what all women do. But no, because I can look at it from a scientific perspective. It's
Mm.
like like just little silly things like you have to be facing the person and maintaining eye contact and all kinds of little things. But it's not just that I pay attention to these things. I literally measure them as an objective measure when I'm looking at people and their connections for science. It's like,
Mhm.
well, we created this environment or this experience. Are people connecting through it or are they not? Well, now I have to measure how much connection is happening. And then I can take that same analytical mind and look at my partner and be like, you are not connecting. And he probably wants to throw me.
And I'm not a number. Stop counting the number of
Yeah.
times I look in your eyes.
Oh yeah, I actually have even written a grant proposal where I was trying to use you mentioned the Microsoft Connect. Wanted to use the Microsoft Connect and natural language processing
Mhm.
to be able to quantify how engaged someone is. Like, so I'm super
Mhm.
interested in that, and which things are good. Like, is this enough? Like, we had like this Google Meet call that we're on. Is this sufficient for us to like feel really connected? Or would a virtual space that had us like actually there and being able to sit next to each other so that if you said something funny, I could put my hand on your shoulder and be like, oh my God, you're so funny. Like,
Yep.
are we
I
losing
think that
something with that?
yeah, and I think the interesting thing about that is like I'm actually looking at what you look like unless you put a filter on, right? Whereas like in a virtual world, it's almost always a avatar of some kind. And so it's not really you. So there's less of that personal connection. So like you were talking before how a lot of the communication, isn't verbal, it's everything else. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you even said, how much do you lose when it's an avatar or it's filtered versus if we can actually see for realsies what we're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. And some people really want that. Like, I was asking some friends of mine who do research in Second Life, which is a
Mm-hmm.
virtual world that people can walk around using like on their flat screens. Hi, Adam, all together.
Hey, welcome
Um,
in.
but but I was asking if people would want to use like these face tracking things, like what you were talking about for you called it VTubing,
Yep.
VTubing. Um, if they would want to use something like face tracking for avatars in Second Life, and I got frequently from people that people in Second Life like the fact that they have control over their appearance entirely, and that they wouldn't want to have it transformed from their physical
Mm-hmm.
behavior onto their avatar. They actually want their avatar to do exactly what they want when they want it
Right.
to do the thing. And then people actually pay lots of money to get different physical behaviors on their avatars in Second Life. which we
Right.
won't go into.
I actually took a class in Second Life. It was
Oh yeah.
teaching and learning in virtual worlds. That was part of my second master's. So that was
Did you
interesting.
like it? I
Oh, I
hate
loved
Second
it.
Life.
Well, I
Oh
liked it.
really?
I liked it in that it was so. I mean, how could you learn about virtual worlds and teaching in them unless you're actually in one,
Right, right. True, true.
right?
Yeah.
And that was like right before Minecraft as a teaching tool really started taking off, which I think is, was much better of a virtual world in many ways than Second Life is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if ISTE still has their ISTE Island. That's what we were on.
Oh
So
really? That's cool. I I found it to be so much work.
it
Maybe
was a lot of work.
just
You had to
yeah,
script
just
everything, and yeah,
yeah. I just found it to be so much work for me, very little return on investment, but I was also like, well, I've been around for a while. So I was around when there was like Imagination Network and you could just jump in a chat room with a little avatar of yourself and then
yeah,
people would see your little avatar and then you would make friends and people would type in the chat ASL for age, sex, and location so they could find out if you were the right age to talk to and the right
yeah,
gender for their preference and if you were close enough to get to, I suppose.
yeah.
We're close enough to care. Like, oh, we're both in Indiana. That's funny. Let's talk about Indiana.
And then all my students that were upset when they ended Club Penguin.
Is that similar?
Yeah, it's like for kids. It was like an
Uh
online like place. But they all
it's too
moved to.
bad
It's funny. Um,
because I mean those. I think those like I've really had a great time in chat rooms and now now there's so much need for moderation, which is not a topic we're supposed to talk about, but gosh, it's like so many cool things. Like a lot of the VR worlds, like alt space. If you go
mhm.
there, then just weird creeps can show up. It's like the Wild West. There's like I've been to conferences that they had in alt space VR, and then like some random person would just come running by yelling profanities, and it was like because they could, but why?
Yeah, but I think it's one of those weird things that, especially as we started teaching, as myself as a middle school and high school teacher, there was that period when weird people would just show up into your meet somehow, and you just have to just quickly kick them, And I think being a streamer helped me, moderate, online chat for classes better. Um, but kids, are the same way. I think they have a better understanding of how these worlds work than many adults do, especially ones that are over probably like 40, because they grew up in these places like Twitch and YouTube and other worlds in online chats where, you know, either they are doing the trolling or they, they hate them and you know how to take care of them. So,
Yeah.
so I definitely think that, yeah, because it happens. And most people don't, kids hate it. They're like, what the heck is this kid doing? They're ruining class. They don't want them in there either. No one wants
Yeah.
a troll in there.
That is so funny that you say that. Just because in my mind I'm thinking that is true. Usually, even in real life, if there's one student that's ruining class, everyone else is like, again,
Hmm.
can you just go to the principal's office or something?
Yeah, I had a student like this week, and he was like, oh, I do an esports club, and he was like, oh, I want to do the Fortnite tournament, but I gotta wait to get unbanned. I'm like, what the heck did you do? It was like, oh, they said I was like saying racist things and like trolling and stuff, and I'm like you,
They say.
I'm like, I'm like, I'm like you reap what you sow. I'm like, whatever. I'm like it. Yeah, but some kids are just nonchalant about it. Ah, whatever. I got banned. Whatever. I'll
Oh
get reinstated, or
wow.
I'll make another account. Whatever. It's just, or I was, I don't know, I'm trying to teach them better, I guess. Maybe I'm too good for my own good.
That's good. That's good that you're trying to teach them better. That's somebody needs to.
Effort and futility is what it is sometimes. But
Yeah.
Anyways,
Well, especially because now everyone's like, which I don't believe. I do believe that the younger people have certain experiences and exposure to technology, but I don't believe in this idea of like Mark Prinsky, the digital native.
oh, that's a load of crap.
I don't believe in that at all because I've been watching these so-called digital natives not be able to operate Excel or send an email appropriately. So just because someone knows how to use technology, that's great. I'm not saying anything negative about the young generation, but they still need guidance. And the really scary thing right now, and this is another thing that comes up in the classes I teach in learning technologies, people keep making all these new technologies to teach, but they're not getting the teachers ready to use them. So it's like, it's
Hmm.
great if we make a really cool tool in VR, but then what if the teachers don't even know how to log in or connect to the Wi-Fi? Not to mention the fact that
Hmm.
most schools won't even let you connect most things to the Wi-Fi. So there's just all
Yep.
these little nuances that people who are like off on the fringe, like, ooh, I'm going to make things to make education better, but they don't really understand the field of education. So they're just like
Exactly. Yep.
throwing stuff
They
into
just
the
want their
wind.
startup money and, get investors and maybe get bought by Microsoft or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
Natty's question here goes well for what we're getting into now, as far as teaching with VR, because I had some questions as well about that. Like, could you talk to that, any, what you see in response to his question?
Well, so there are, I do think that there are tons of tools. Do I have? Well, one tool that I like a lot, and it's not just because they made me a brand ambassador, but full disclosure, they did. But this, you can't see it because I don't know where the
Oh,
actual
merge.
device is.
Yep.
I think it's in the living room. But yeah,
Yep.
Merge. I met them oddly at E3 a few years ago, and this doesn't show up that well. But like the Merge VR and then mixed reality, because they have a cube that
Hmm.
can be um, basically a hologram of anything that it's programmed to be, and they supposedly have a very user-friendly kind of place to create new content. I have not explored that at all. And I don't know what they mean by user-friendly, if they mean user-friendly if you're already a developer or if they have something for someone who's a teacher. But that would be a thing that I would recommend. They have, last that I talked to them, something like 80, and it's probably more than that because I haven't talked to them in quite a while, but 80 different education apps. I
Hmm.
haven't seen anything specifically for biology, but I know even at my university, they're working on um, a VR game. These are reasons why I don't want Alicia Hayes connected with EpicLalaGirl just yet. They're working on a VR game for the Punnett Square, and I think the idea is great, but I've looked at it and it's not really fun. And as someone who is a person who is an actual gamer but also
Hmm.
believes in gamification, um, it's kind of a standard I have that if you call something a game, it should be fun. So yeah, that's, and also for me, the other thing that I teach a lot, and I totally believe so, like especially if your students are listening to this, the idea
Hmm.
of gamification is like taking the things that work really well in games and using them in other parts of life, right? So it's not just like, oh, turn everything into a game, because you can't. But you can take elements that are from games and put them in other parts of your life. Like, I gamify chores in my house, and my kids compete over stuff in our household. It's not a game, but adding elements of competition is gamifying things, and adding prizes is gamifying things, and adding leaderboards is gamifying things. And you can
Hmm.
gamify, well, I tend to think you can probably gamify most things if you're good at
Yep.
it.
Now that's another line of questioning I want to get into, but I want to go back to VR, and I think I've used VR a little bit in classes as well as AR, and I think there's a misconception, and maybe you'll agree with this, that you have to make it into a game for kids to like it. But you
Oh
know what?
yeah.
Science is cool enough on its own, and
Yeah.
technology that kids will learn it without the game if you make it compelling enough.
Oh yeah. Uh,
It just is, especially VR experiences.
yeah.
They can be compelling enough without that game interface that they're trying to force, a square peg into a round hole.
Absolutely. Like, well, I just a few of the things that I've seen just on the Merge Cube, which the Merge Cube is like low hanging fruit because it's like $100 for the, I think maybe like $140 for the little headset that you pop your phone in and the cube together. Um, but I mean, I guess lower hanging fruit is like just 360 videos, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely just the fact that you can do things like look at the solar system and zoom in, like with
Mm-hmm.
when you have the cube in your hand, you like the cube can be the sun and the planets all around. That is still fascinating to me that you could be holding the solar system in the palm of your hand. And like I've worked with some teachers on like building lesson plans around that. Like, how do you build a lesson plan around a virtual experience when generally virtual experiences aren't, most of them aren't meant to last for more than like 3 to 6 minutes, but you have like a class that's 50 minutes long. So we talked about like working in small groups and then writing about things that you've
Mm-hmm.
experienced and even drawing things you've experienced. And I'm even right now planning a summer camp to teach people about like design thinking and even to start thinking about, it doesn't feel like it, but I guess people who are using VR right now are still what they call early adopters. So to start thinking about what kinds of things would be effective to teach, like what do you think would be fascinating? What part of science do you think is really interesting that maybe I missed? Um, and then
Mm-hmm.
we had an event last week where one of our speakers was talking about just copying mental mindsets of geniuses and representing them in VR as like physical representations of the way that someone thinks. And he was talking about, which I'm apparently not the greatest at this, but maybe someone else can envision what he means. But he was talking about like showing imaginary numbers in VR and how that would be more
Mm-hmm.
effective because it's a concept that people can't wrap their heads around, but maybe it would be easier for people if you showed them, or something like pi. Why is it that pi goes on and on and on? And he said, well, if you show them zooming in and as you make pi longer, the circle gets more and more perfect, then they would understand maybe
Right.
why that's why that,
Right.
the
And I've
complexity.
heard that done with multiple dimensions as well. So
Oh
going
yeah.
beyond, your normal, one dimension, flat Stanley kind of thinking, two, three, four, five, six, six, and trying to envision that in, multiple dimensions with VR. Uh, I've heard that as well. And I think we're at the stage in VR where it's good just to throw everything against the wall and see what sticks, right? It's kind of like this is the proving ground. It's like let's just try some stuff, and the good stuff will work out, and the stuff that's terrible, well, survival of the fittest. A little Darwinian VR here. The stuff that people like, they'll buy and will catch on, and the stuff that people don't like, then it won't catch on.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I my general approach is to ask someone these questions like, uh, you want to do something in VR, is it too expensive to do
Mm-hmm.
outside of VR? Is it difficult to do outside of VR? Is it impossible to do outside of VR? Is it unsafe to do outside of VR? Is it more fun because of VR? And based on the answers to those questions, I'm like, oh, maybe not worth it. Like, if
Right.
it's not more fun, if it's cheaper to do in the really real world, like, why it's so time consuming right now. Like, it's still time consuming to create VR experiences, right? And then just the just, it's like things that you could make that work perfectly fine on your desktop computer. When you try to put it into VR, you have to render it twice for both eyes. So, and then we're trying to render it in these like Oculus Quests that are not nearly as powerful as your desktop computer.
Mm-hmm.
So they just don't work. They freeze. They lock most of the devices unless you have high-end equipment. Because you're rendering twice as many frames per second because you're rendering for both eyes. Because the way that virtual reality works is that it's showing you an image at slightly different angles so that it's replicating what you would see in the real world out of both of your eyes, so that your visual cortex gets the sense that you're really there. And then how we get virtual reality sickness, how we get motion sickness, is when your vestibular system doesn't feel like what's happening in your eyes makes sense with how your body is physically moving. It's like, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when my brain tells me that the world is spinning around me, I vomit after. so right now the world is spinning around me because what's in front of my eyes, and my inner ear is telling me I'm sitting still. Something is not right about this. And then you yak. Hopefully you don't. But I like the devices now are so much better at well, also developers are better at not doing things that are jarring to that distinction, like
Mm-hmm.
making you do something like a roller coaster while you're sitting still. But then you can
Mm-hmm.
add also haptics, right? Like if you did something like a roller coaster experience, but you also added some physical stimuli to someone, like blowing a fan in their face, it actually reduces the likelihood that they're going to have motion sickness, because their brain is like, okay, this is normal-ish. I'm going on too much.
No, you're not. Everyone's getting into it. You were in the zone right there. That was good. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot more, like at least in the group that I hang out with on Discord and online, a lot of Quest fans, VR fans. Um, but it's also, I've always found it the case where when getting into educational games, which are generally terrible, it's usually always the case where it's better to take a game that is commercially available but has good educational components to it. Like I'll go back to Minecraft, which is a great example. You can use that as a great tool to teach with because it's such an open sandbox game. Or using city skylines for planning or something. There's obvious games that are commercially available that are really well done that kind of adapt better for education than something that was made specific for education.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with you that that's what works best now. So this, you can probably tell from the hour we've spent together so far that I care about too many things.
I know from your Twitter feed as well. That's coming up.
But so one of the things that is kind of one of my soapboxes is this idea of making learning games better. And I don't think that it is rocket science, even though it seems to feel like that, because somehow people can't ever do it.
Mm-hmm.
or they can hardly ever do it. I'm sure there are some
Yep.
that are really great experiences, but
Yep.
the norm is that they suck. And I think, first of all, we lack standards that, like I said, the very basic standard, is it fun? And then we also, one thing that I've seen frequently is we have a divide between the area of subject matter experts on anything that you want to teach someone
Mm-hmm.
and people who are good at development. And there has to be this other piece, people who understand how people learn. And those people almost never work together. But I think they should always work together when you're talking about this kind of thing. Like, I don't think, for instance, the game I was talking about making in VR, I'm not just going to willy-nilly pull out of thin air what can people learn in a flood about STEM, because I only know my discipline and maybe a teeny bit from a couple other disciplines. I'm going to talk to people who are environmental engineers, and I'm going to talk to people who work for FEMA, and I'm going to talk to people who are civil engineers, and I'm going to talk to people who know what it would take to like get the internet back up and working, and I'm going to talk to other people who I don't even know I need to talk to yet. But I prioritize subject matter experts, and I'm going to be arrogant when I criticize other people and their arrogance and say that people always think that they know best on a project. And I've been in these rooms very often where it's like I worked on a leadership game that never launched because we could never gel as a group. But the leadership experts were like, no, it's got to be like this. And then the people who had been developing games, I taught at Full Sail University while I was working on my PhD and the game development program. So I worked with people who had been making games for places like Atari and Sony for like over a decade. And they were like, no, we understand what's fun. And I was like, but what about learning over here? Like, are we going to make sure they learn in the game? And it's like, we just could not come to a place where everyone valued everyone else's perspective.
Right. And I have a couple side things for that. One,
Okay.
There have been some good educational games. Like one I really liked and I used in class was Radix Endeavor, and that was made by MIT Education Arcade. And I talked to one of the developers a couple years ago, and I'm like, what happened to that game? It was so good. And they're like, oh, the grant money ran out.
Yes.
And I'm
yes.
like, well, so you have a great game. You've spent years developing it and making a quality product, and it just, the professor leaves that started it, or the grant money runs out, or, the fellowship dissolves, or whatever, that's one of the things that kind of, especially that higher ed piece, that kind of thing happens, it seems, all the time. And it's frustrating for, someone like an educator that's trying to use these games, especially a really good one. And then it's like, okay, it's Flash, can't use that anymore,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a sad thing about the amount of stuff that just is gonna stop working now because of Flash going away. But no, I completely agree with you. There's actually funding that National Science Foundation has and other probably federal institutions have, that they try to do tech transfer from universities to like start businesses like about the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yep.
But I think you're totally right. Like I that's a different soapbox that I have. It's like you do so much stuff in the university.
That's one of my soapboxes too.
and then when the funding runs out, we just push everything into a closet and start a new project. and as long as we've written a few papers about it, then if we got, $2 million and we affected, 10,000 kids in this short period of time.
We have a data point, we can.
Yeah. And then we write a few papers and give a few presentations at some conferences. Then that was what we were meant to do. But it seems to me like I keep saying this to different people when I meet with them, like, because I am supposed to be trying to get grant funding. So I've met with some program officers from like NSF and NEH and the Department of Defense. And it's like, can we just get a place where we can put all of this stuff and save it, or have some national museum of like learning tools that have been developed by all these people. And you're right. When I'm so cynical and say that there are no good learning games, I've made good learning games. They're gone now. They were at a website that was around.
You can still play Oregon Trail though. That's good.
Yes, thank goodness. Probably also due to lack of business from lack of funding from schools using it. Yeah. And then that's just discoverability, right? It's like who asked about, oh yeah, Natty Science, you asked about like what VR would be really good for teaching some lab-based things. And there probably are, even if there aren't any commercially available ones, certainly there's some researchers who have gotten funded to make some VR stuff for biology. But where is it? How do we get our hands on it? Like, I feel like that's a thing that
it's definitely a
Another
thing.
soapbox.
Yeah.
Another soapbox for after I get tenure.
Yeah. And I don't think it's one of the weird thing is it's, education is not well funded, but at the same time, businesses want to get into education because there is lots of money. If you can get, the New York City districts or the, LA Unified School Districts to buy a game, you've automatically just made buttloads of money.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean, so it's not like the money isn't there for educational games. It is, but it is a fairly hard, it can be a hard nut to crack.
Yeah.
It can be.
Definitely.
Um,
If you have evidence that you could teach something and that kids would stay engaged in it, then you would be able to sell it for sure.
Yep.
But then maintaining those things like Smithsonian, like the government funded Smithsonian, they have a bunch of educational learning tools that I've heard them talk about in meetings, but I don't know how easy it is to download them from their website and integrate them into your class. And then it's back to the question and Natty Science totally about the funding, because teachers don't get paid enough as it is, and now they're supposed to become researchers to find games and figure out how to integrate them into their classes and change their lesson plans. That's a lot.
I mean, most teachers I know that have merge cubes bought them.
Oh, really? That
Yeah.
stinks.
Well, there was, I missed out on it. Walmart had them for $1 a piece at one point.
What?
Like 2 years ago when they first came out.
Wow.
There was like a run on them.
Spaced
So-
out more.
You don't need to pay me
Yes.
more. I'm tenured. I'm well into my career. It's the starting teachers that need to be paid more to help recruit the next generation. That's where the money needs to go, towards recruiting new teachers, especially K-12.
What do you think about this? I've been thinking about this is like a total aside, but since you're a teacher, I've been thinking about the number of under-resourced, I guess, elderly people that exist, who just barely get by with their Social Security, and the number of classes that need aides. And I was thinking, I wonder if they could take a lot of these retired people and let them be aides in classrooms, or if that would be a terrible idea.
That's a terrible idea.
You think it's a terrible idea?
There's
Why?
this because of the energy level differences.
Ah, okay, that's fair. Just like they could just watch. Yeah, you're right. They would just watch.
It takes a lot more than just watching, because you actually have to do things and respond. And it's also, you have to, I don't know, they probably wouldn't understand half of what the kids say. I don't even understand half what they say some days. It'd be like speaking another language. Yeah, because it is.
Yeah. That does make sense. In my mind, I'm thinking of like my kids, like my ex-mother-in-law, my kid's grandmother. And I'm like, she seems really energetic. But then again, I never see her for more than a few hours.
Not that it couldn't work. Like, we had a substitute passed away recently that we had in our district, and he was beloved. He was a former teacher as well. And he was, when I first got to the district, he was, really old, right? He was already in his like 70s at that point subbing, but the kids loved it, and you just knew when he came in to sub your class that he would not follow your lesson plans and he would just tell stories the entire period, right?
I love it.
But the kids loved it too, and he loved it. So it was one of those things where you're like, oh, all right, I got Mr. Barnard coming in. All right, nothing's going to get done, but it'll be okay. So it's that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, you could have someone older in there, but don't expect any of your curriculum to get done, while he's in there.
Okay.
But then again, when it comes to like being in the classroom, sometimes, a null result is better than some result. Yeah. I'd rather nothing happen than my class become a complete, wreck when I return.
Yeah.
So that's just a little side story. It's not that we can't have them, but it has to be the right type of person. It's just like teaching it, or even being an aide. You have to love kids. Not everyone that's over 80 loves kids.
You're the subject matter expert that I had to ask before I decided that this was a new soapbox of mine, and now I know I can let that one die.
Not that it
That one
shouldn't be encouraged. I
could go out
think
to pasture.
they can definitely benefit each other. I think there's a lot to be said for younger, kids being around, the older generation, and older generation being around younger kids that, especially in the age of COVID, doesn't happen enough. There's so much they can provide each other socially, that we're missing out on.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, one of my daughters told me they have a friend who said like that they basically don't talk to their parents at all about anything, and I just thought, how depressing. It's like the most depressing thing I've ever heard. Unless maybe their parents are total jerk faces, in which case maybe it's better that way. But
Yep.
yeah, I think it's a sad thing that we lose this intergenerational connectivity. Natty science, I had a chemistry teacher that did funny voices and made lots of jokes. He had a shelf of stuffed moles. That's funny.
Yep.
Annie Montana. Nice.
All right. Next thing I want your opinion on that we could have a whole nother conversation about probably. And it's been a conversation in the gamification area for a while now. And, that's the people that see gamification as behaviorism and very Skinner-esque. And they want to shy away from any behaviorism at all in the classroom, because it's not good for kids. So, so almost all gamification, therefore, in the classroom with kids is bad. Have you heard that argument before? Because it's been going around.
I have not heard anyone argue against gamification because of it being Skinner-esque. I'm just interested in why anyone who wants to teach would think behaviorism is not good. Like reinforcing positive behaviors that you want to see more of. I don't understand why people would think that's not a healthy thing. If that's what we do when we give students A's or C's.
Well, there you're getting into. You shouldn't have grades either.
Oh, who are these? Who are these people?
You need to get into my circle of Twitter. All right, there's a whole other area of Twitter you got to get into. So
okay, so there are people who think, what's the argument then? Is it do they think it's inhumane or manipulative or?
It's manipulative. You're like toying with their emotions basically, and that you should have intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation for what you do.
I don't believe that. I personally don't believe that. So I really love school. One of my degrees is in psychology, and the first memory that I had, the most strong memory that I have as an early psychology student, was one of my professors saying that internal motivation is a lie.
I tend to agree.
And I remember, and altruism is a lie. And I remember being so upset about it and wanting so desperately to prove him wrong, particularly about the altruism being a lie. And it's like, well, because if you are doing something kind, then you're doing it because it feels good. And that is you releasing endorphins in your own body and dopamine and all of this stuff. And so therefore, it's not really that you did it for the sake of being good. You did it because it felt good to you. And I'm like, I mean, I can't, there's nowhere I can go from there. I'm like, well, yes, but that's a good thing, right? That's better than me being a nefarious actor in the world, like wanting to kick babies and things, like for my release of endorphins. So that's a good thing. But I don't necessarily either agree that the intrinsic motivation happens without some external forces. I mean, and now we're like getting into like philosophy, right? Like, do I exist without other people? Like, is this a solipsism? Do I just exist in my own world? So is my hunger even real? Because I guess like being hungry could be intrinsically motivating, except that there are external factors that impact that. So to me, the concept of avoiding behaviorism is so bizarre. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm so sorry. I've really been blown away today. I did not expect to have my mind blown, and my mind is blown.
Oh, good. I am glad that I could expand your knowledge, because these are the things, I think about. And I was having this discussion with another educator and someone else on Twitter, and it came down to what was the intention of the gamification, which of course comes back to what you said. A game is to have fun, right?
Yeah.
And if you've actually gamified something fully, it's fun. Though gamification by definition is just applying some aspect of games to some other non-game situation. So, and that was my argument. I'm like, does that mean every pizza party that we have at school as a reward for the class that brought in the most cans for the soup kitchen? I mean, it's all of a sudden that's all like, garbage, when we're making kids, do something because they're going to get a reward for it. But then I come back to what you said, and I'm like, well, that's just the way things are,
So you walk into the kitchen to get food because you're going to get a reward for it, and then are we questioning like the Pavlov now? Like, well, if you're so we've manipulated the dog to drool. I mean, I guess in that case that is kind of. I don't particularly like that study. It does seem a little unethical to teach a dog that the bell has something to do with food if you're not going to give him food when there's a bell.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can see on this level with those people for those kinds of things.
Right.
But it seems to me to be nitpicking a much bigger set of problems in our world. We can't get kids graduating from high school at the desirable rate, or being capable of doing mathematics and at a comparable level to our competition in the world.
And their main criticism, it comes down to some things that I don't like, where they, like, elementary schools are famous for this. They'll have the chart at the front of class, and they'll have like the kids' names on the clothespin, and they move it up or down as far as doing good in class, satisfactory, and needs more progress, and they move that, clothespin with the kid's name on it up and down on this chart, based on how the kid is doing that day. It's a, gamified system, kind of like a leaderboard in a way.
Yeah.
And that's seen as like, really bad, teacher practice.
I agree with that, actually, that's not effective teacher practice. So I've done some stuff with gamifying college classes. And I don't know, everyone's supposed to follow FERPA, but it seems like our administration yell at us when we violate it. So putting a student on a leaderboard without their permission, like the one you're describing, would be frowned upon. So I, like in my classes that I have gamified in the past, people had to opt in to the leaderboard. And I don't like, because I can see in that sense how using something like that would be shaming kids. And I don't believe in shame. I believe in positive reinforcement, not punishment.
Right. Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah. And for my gamification in class, when I do it by team, not by individual.
That works too. Yeah.
So there's no name with it. So, because I don't want them to have that.
It's either. Like, wow, Jimmy, you're the stupidest kid in our class.
Way to go.
That's great. Eric, no shame, no gain. That is a different approach that I am sure that my mom sometimes believed when I was growing up. It was not the most effective for me.
Public shaming was the main way to teach up until probably 2001. Okay,
oh my gosh.
I mean, it was public shaming. Is still, rampant. Think about all the awards ceremonies kids have to go to. They have to sit there, and all their classmates go up to receive awards while they're sitting there being like, "Well, I'm the stupid one. I'm stuck in my seat."
Yeah. But then you get the inverse of that, which is like, so now we give everyone an award for everything under the sun. It's like, well, we already gave the
Exactly.
citizenship award, so I guess we're gonna have most likely to show
That's
up on the first day of school
best
award.
classroom troll. I mean, you know,
That sense of humor. How do you deal with people who are competitive and go after all the points? Oh, people who aren't competitive. Wait, I'm not
who are
sure.
competitive and go after all the points. Well, what I do in class, you have the superlative awards. Yeah. But as far as gamification, you have what I like to call the bullet effect, which is we have in Mario Kart, where you can get your power up and you can shoot to the head of the group, right? So
Ah,
you try to incorporate things like that into your leaderboard. So if anyone's really far behind, they can kind of try to catch up. It's a good game element to have anyways for leaderboard, so no one feels like they're out of it. In the same way, you can like there are games where you can freeze the person that's in first place, right? So they can't do anything for some period of time. Um,
oh, interesting. I honestly I haven't had such success with leaderboards in my class that I've ever even had to do that because the students just kind of found them novel. They weren't like fighting for first place. They were just kind of like, "Oh, I'm in first
right.
place. Suck it, losers." Not, but they weren't like, "I'm gonna try really hard."
Right.
Um,
I find that more for smaller, like if I do a gamified lesson, like 1 or 2 days, it's more, for that versus a year long game, which is like really hard to do for a,
yeah.
semester long.
Or like one of my students was talking about doing an RPG in one of her classes as the gamification of an English class, which I said was a good idea, and also it terrifies me because
Mm-hmm.
I just think about the people who have zero interest in RPGs and that idea, like part of the idea that goes with gamification is making sure that whatever you're doing still aligns with your learning objectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I know that I just got really boring right then, but but I mean, but seriously though, like if you have someone who's like, well, yeah, I'm a gamer all day, but I'll play FPSs. I don't care about a role playing game. So it's even if you think you're adding a game element to your class and you're going to get the gamers engaged, I think a lot of times people don't really understand what motivates their students. Who doesn't like RPGs?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't we all
Um,
nerds in science class?
yeah, one of my biggest problems with because I've gamified using kind of like an RPG style stuff is that the non-English learners and people that just don't have RPGs as part of a game that they've ever played, right?
Mm-hmm.
You say hit points, they're like, "What?" Right? But you're like, "Oh, you're the healer." A what? Right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's no concept. Uh, there's not the vocabulary there that they can get in. So all of a sudden, you've added another layer of vocabulary on top of your curriculum, which is already vocabulary intensive. That if they want to
Right.
play, they have to overcome. And it's not that they can't.
Yes.
And maybe I feel it's important that they do understand RPG vocabulary. Uh, but it's just something you have to be cognizant of when you're teaching, with that kind of RPG, even if you're doing it as a smaller lesson,
Yeah.
where you have hit points or something like that, or any game, the vocabulary that goes with it, especially for either culturally or just you know language acquisition, they don't have that.
And yeah, I think that you can, Eric, and I do love the idea of giving students fun things to do for homework. I think kind of like along what you're saying, Scott. The question is if it's extra learning for no, like them having to do all this extra learning for no learning outcome that is for the purpose of the class. But I mean, the flip side of that is that when we talk about science learning, one of the things that we talk about is people being able to communicate with
Mm-hmm.
words. So just because someone learns something in STEM doesn't mean they're not going to have to communicate it in writing or with charts. So maybe you could justify things like hit points and things like, well, that's actually something you would actually have to apply. You could
Mm-hmm.
actually use a visualization of hit points and things like that.
Yep.
I guess it depends on how passionate the teacher is about integrating it into the class. Because I personally, I like RPGs. Like I played D&D for the first time in forever earlier this year, but I don't like it enough that I would want to run an RPG in a class full of people who didn't care about RPGs. Now, if it were a class of people who were like creatives who thought that this kinds of thing would be interesting, then for sure I would love to do it. I just wouldn't want to do it with like people who are like, are you serious? This is math and you want me to learn how to do role playing? What?
Yep. I think making it approachable is very important in knowing the level that you're at, knowing your students basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And if you're a good teacher and passionate about it, you probably could convey that passion to your students, like you were saying about the retired substitute.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's passionate about his stories, and people like his stories, and that's good enough.
Make it all
kids must grow up playing D&D.
Well, it's very good, and I think there is, especially as far as role playing, there is a piece to this which really helps with video games in particular, where you have, if you play a role, you can develop empathy, for that role, right? For role playing in different situations. So work on that improv skill, right, Eric? The cooperations, all of that. It's very good. There's a lot of stuff behind that. I went to at least, I think I went to 2 sessions at past PAX East 2 years ago, where they were had sessions on D&D and learning. They're very
cool.
good. So
so speaking of like D&D, when you're talking about game development stuff, funny thing, at Full Sail University, that's in Florida, they have a pretty big game development and game design program. Dave Arneson, who was the creator of D&D, used to teach there, and he used to have people, like, he taught a game design class, and he just had people play D&D, and that was like the class, is what I'm told.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away before I ever worked there, but I think that there's definitely
cool.
some validity in the idea that if you have any interest in being anything related to gaming, you should kind of have an understanding of D&D.
Yep.
Or RPGs of some kind of RPG. Some people are like using Twine. Have you used Twine at all to make?
I've seen it, and I went to a couple like sessions, like teacher trainings on using Twine, but I've never gotten into it just because it just didn't fit anywhere in what I was doing.
Yeah.
What I was teaching. If I was an English teacher, I would definitely be doing it because that's how I would teach. But it, there's a couple ways you could do Twine type stuff that's a little easier than Twine, but yeah, Twine's really cool. I have done lots of stuff. I have trainings with Twine. I have done lots of stuff. Now, we're going to end this chat pretty soon, because for me it's 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah. It's 10 here.
Yeah. Before you go, though, I do have a game I'm going to play with you.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And so we're going to see how well you can determine truth from fiction. Now, your Twitter handle is EpicLalaGirl. So I want to know how much you know about the movie La La Land, in particular the actor Ryan Gosling. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions about Ryan Gosling and see how well you know him. Your favorite handsome Canadian, right? Okay. And if you get 2 out of 3 right, someone in the chat will be gifted a sub. Okay. So how's that? So motivation for you as we end with the game here. All right, question
You're
one.
manipulating me with your Skinner logic. Sorry, go ahead.
Are you ready? You got question
I'm
one.
ready.
All right, Ryan Gosling, right, the lead actor in the movie, right, La La Land. Which of these is a true story about what he did during recess in elementary school that got him suspended?
Ooh.
A, he pooped in a playground tunnel and then denied it.
I hope that's not it.
B, he filled a box with knives and then threw the box at kids.
Oh my.
Or C, he kept asking girls to marry him.
C.
It was actually B.
No way.
He had a box of knives that he was throwing at kids.
Oh my goodness. Wait, were
Yep.
they plastic knives?
I don't know.
Oh wow. Ryan.
So you thought he was just a sweet, handsome Canadian.
I really liked the third one. I'm so disappointed.
You're like, oh, if I was one of those girls. All right,
Yes,
question.
where did he get those knives? Maybe they were plastic knives. Did he get them from
It's
the cafeteria?
Canada. I don't know. Maybe all the moose were carrying them or something. All right.
Okay.
Okay, question two. What was Ryan's nickname as a child? Was it A, Trouble, B, 007, or C, Booty Boy?
Let's go with A, Trouble.
You are correct.
Yes! Thank goodness it wasn't that Booty
You
Boy.
listened to the first question and,
Oh my goodness. Quick Google it, he won't notice.
I'm pretty good at telling when people Google stuff. I do that in class all the time. Right?
Oh yeah, I
It's
bet
like
so.
you got 5 seconds, you hear a kid at home, tapping on a keyboard. You're like, I hear what you're doing.
Oh yeah, we
Don't
already
Google it.
established this. My keyboard is so loud. I think you guys can hear it in the audio.
All right, question 3. All right, this is it.
For the big money.
Big
free
money
sub.
right here. Yeah,
Sorry.
free sub. What claim does Gosling make about Britney Spears? Is it A, that he taught her about sex and he, quote, feels somewhat responsible for how sexual she is now? B, that he helped her get into the new Mickey Mouse Club and she couldn't have done it without him?
Oh.
Or C, that Britney wrote the song I'll Be a Slave for You for him and to him?
C.
It was actually A,
What?
that he
You've
taught
got to
her
be-
about sex and he, quote, feels somewhat responsible for how sexual she is now.
What?
It's true.
What?
You can look it up.
Wow. He just got so much less attractive today. Oh my goodness.
Oh, he's still so handsome. His chest, though. Ooh. I mean, come on.
Wow. I am floored. Okay, wait. How do I do this?
Oh, you're actually going to look it up. You're like, what?
No. I was one
I don't believe you.
second. No, I'm why is this happening? Here it is. Because I feel badly for my poor performance. I was trying
Oh,
to figure out how to gift a sub chat. I think I did it.
let's go there. And under
It's
the thing it
almost
says.
done. I gifted the chairman
Oh, there you go.
the community.
There you go,
Someone
MS
got
Higley.
it. Who got it?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Because you don't have to lose because I lose. Yay, you.
Hurrah! We're all winners here. Let's start giving out awards, everybody.
Yes, I get the I don't know anything about Ryan Gosling award.
Except that he's really hot.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that.
Now I know that he's hot and an asshole, which I should have guessed, but who says that? That's terrible. Oh my gosh, I said it again. Another profanity. I'm so
I'm sure.
sorry.
I'm sure any eighth graders watching are mortified. Mother,
Oh yeah,
you won't
that's true.
believe the language she's using. It's terrible.
My daughters are in ninth and 10th grade, and I cuss around them all the time. So it's very strange that for a while I tried to stop cussing around them when they got to be teenagers. And they were like, Mom, you've always cussed around us. Why are you stopping now? And I'm like, well, because I don't want to be a bad influence. And they're like, well, I feel like they were basically like, that ship has sailed. Like, I'm good at other parts of parenting. It's fine.
Oh, we're pretty good. My kids are in seventh grade and junior 11th grade. So, and my wife and I are both teachers. So we have
Oh,
always been
wow.
very clean, no trouble not using foul language because we just always didn't. Just because
Right.
you can't, because I can't go into school and just all of a sudden be like, "Ah, you know, because if you get used to it, you just start doing it all over.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just got used to not doing it. So
No, it's really good. I made it my New Year's resolution this year. It lasted for about 3 days. My kids laughed at me when I told them I failed. Maybe next year, 2022.
maybe
That's
next
the
year.
year for
There you go.
cleanliness in my vocabulary. You know, they say though that using profanity is a sign of intelligence. They probably lied.
Yeah, it's a sign you can't think of anything else creative to say. No. I've heard it
Well,
both ways.
but this has been fun and
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you so much for inviting me onto
Oh,
your
we're have to have you
science
back. We have
stream.
so many topics that we could talk about again forever. So since we have so much in common, we could just do a stream
Yeah,
just about kung fu.
yeah, that would be fun. That would be super fun. And I should look and see if there are any. Well, I've seen some like prototypes at conferences, VR uh, learning things for martial arts. I don't know if it's necessarily kung fu, but martial arts VR learning experiences. I think that will be fun. Oh, I wanted to share something with you. I'm gonna.
Okay.
I can. Um, I'll put it in the chat because I. Oh wait, no, I'm not a sub, so I
I will
can't put it in the
have
chat.
to.
I'll put it in your chat, and if you want to, after you see it, if you want to share it with people,
Okay.
because this, I am really interested in. Oops, I have to go back to Google. 1 second. I'm really interested in highly immersive, interactive, embodied experiences in VR. So like where you get to be in a body and do things with your physical body to control that body. So the video I just put in the chat is my favorite VR experience I've been in so far. And it's called Be Bait. And you get to be a fish. And then a shark eats you.
Oh God, that's terrifying.
It's amazing though. It's so good. It's so good. So yeah, it's crazy. But so if you watch like towards the end of the video, these little bars, like a bar drops down and one comes from below me to squish me right when the shark bites me. So I get the haptic feedback of getting bitten by the shark. But to move, you actually don't walk or use controllers to point. You actually have to wiggle your body to make the fish move. So if you stop moving, you stop moving as the fish, and then you're more likely. I love Add 'em all together. I love your emote. But yeah, that's my favorite experience I've been in VR so far, and that's why I don't have any interest in people learning the alphabet in VR because I'm like, there's so much cool stuff right around the corner, really cool things to try, like being things you never even thought of. Like I never thought I was going to go to this conference and be a fish and get eaten by a shark, which by the way is hilarious because even when you put someone in a cheap VR like a Google Cardboard and you have sharks swimming at them, um, I once got punched by a 7-year-old when I was showing VR at a museum because a shark came towards him in a VR headset and he swung at it and he hit me because I was standing there like a moron because I should have known better. But yeah, the kinds of things, it's not just about recreating things we can do in the really real world. So when I say I'm a cynic about VR, it doesn't mean I don't like it. I just know that there's a lot of stuff that could be a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have only so many life minutes, and I
Yep.
want to make sure I'm using them on things that are actually fascinating to me.
Well said. Oh yeah, I love that. I was watching
Yeah.
the hammocks. It is crazy. Someone thought of that, by the way.
Yes, right?
So it's cool. So I'm
That's
like,
why
let's
I want
use hammocks.
every one of your students who thinks they might be interested in VR development or game development, I want them to look at that and be like, what crazy thing could you want to be? Like, they've taught people to like use their limbs. Like, there's a thing called the homunculus effect. They taught people to use their 4 limbs to move a spider body, and people have to learn which ones of the spider legs move when they move certain parts of their body, which is fascinating to me. Like you, and then
Yeah,
people like take
weird.
on these different things. Like, it's just so cool that you could like take on a new body and it could feel real to you. That's wow. I'm excited about that.
That says something about the brain as well. To get into the neurology side of all of this. That's amazing. All right, let's go raid a channel. There are a couple we could raid here tonight. Decaf Jedi is playing Monkey Island. That's always good. And Diatom's Attack. They're looking at diatoms from East Africa. So I don't know if the chat wants to vote on where we want to go you want to go to see Monkey Island? I love Decaf Jedi. His voice is fantastic. He's the type of guy I could just listen to it in the background if I had to. So we can go do that for sure. So I can walk the dogs and go to bed before midnight. Yeah.
Yay.
All right.
Adulting.
A solid 5 hours of sleep. That's what I'm going for. But thank you everyone for being here. The next stream will be Friday, where I will attempt to play more of Subnautica and get through that game. Thank you, EpicLalaGirl.
Thank you.
Lala, wonderful having you here. I'm gonna keep connecting with you because it's great stuff. So wonderful. We could just talk for another 5 hours probably. And I miss going to things like PAX and things like that where you can actually meet people.
Me too. But we'll have a meetup now. Ooh, a science meetup.
Hey, I'm vaccinated. You're vaccinated. People in chat are probably vaccinated at this point. Good stuff. So there's also rocket launch night. There's also didn't the president speak tonight too? So much going on. And you chose to listen to us. That's how valuable this conversation is. So thank you everyone for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yep.
The raid has been canceled. Nerds Unite. Yes.
Is where the last time I did a raid, it said it got canceled, but it didn't. It was weird.
Okay.
Sometimes raids are weird like that. Recently, it wasn't always like that, but sometimes you try to do something and then it says, "No, you can't do it," and then in reality, you did do it. So
yeah.
So I'll have to actually go to the stream and see if it worked. So
I'm in the stream. And
there you are.
Yeah, and we're still live.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, we're still live, but
And in the stream, it says the raid has been canceled.
Weird. Well, we're going to go there anyways. Whether it raids properly or not, we'll just go there and say, raid!
Okay. What's the first thing?
I'll put it in there. I'll try one more time and see if it works. Nope. Something went wrong. Try running that quick action again later. Stupid. All right. Anyways, I'll put that in chat so we can just go there. If anyone else, please say hi to him. Support other teachers. and other streamers.
Decaf
There you
J.
go.
Here I go.
All right, everyone. Good night.
Good night.